What is going on, YouTubers? Gabe here with Review Dork, and sorry I'm not wearing my hat. It was actually a rough night yesterday, and I decided to, work on my Justin Bieber look. But anyways, we're going to talk about the Xbox Scorpio, and the spec sheet has been leaked all across the internet. I want to thank Digital Foundry for taking Microsoft up on their invitation, as they got to experience Forza 6 at 4K 60 frames per second. Now, us folks in the PC Master Race, well, we've already done that. We've experienced that. I have with an Nvidia GTX 1070. But, for a console, that is absolutely mind-blowing. Now, I have been the biggest skeptic on whether or not Microsoft could achieve 4K at 60 frames per second. But looking at the spec sheet, well, you know what? We're not just talking numbers, guys. Okay, so we have a custom x86 8-core processor clocked at 2.3 gigahertz compared to the Xbox One 8-core Jaguar chipset clocked at 1.75 and the PS4 2.1 gigahertz, also a Jaguar chipset. So as far as like clock speed, the CPU, yeah, definitely. But to complement that clock speed, what Microsoft also did was include 12 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory. Now let's compare that to the 8 gigabytes of DDR3 on the Xbox One and the 8 gigabytes of GDDR5 on the PS4 Pro. So what does that mean? Well, more memory means better performance. And so what Microsoft is introducing to us is an absolute monster, a sledgehammer of a machine that again supports their ambitions of 4K. But let's not stop there. Let's talk about the 326 gigabytes per second. This is mind-numbing, guys. 326 gigabytes per second of memory, okay? So what does this mean? That throughput, that bandwidth, allows for the resolutions that Microsoft promised us, right? And so the bandwidth memory tends to be the common bottleneck component of almost every graphics card out there. So having that memory, and mind you, my Nvidia GTX 1070 has about 250 gigabytes or 256 gigabytes of bandwidth, okay? But when we take that number and throw it up to 326 gigabytes per second and actually compare it to the PS4's 219 gigabytes per second, we see that Microsoft was just hell-bent on taking over the gaming console market, especially when it comes to 4K. Now, the bandwidth at 8 gigabytes per second coming from the PS4 Pro, well, the 4K checkerboarding solution would work. It did work. It has worked. But people have complained that it was not native 4K. Now, again, I'm a major skeptic, or I was a major skeptic, if Microsoft could actually pull this off with an Xbox One. But they have. That bandwidth is insane. So what does that bandwidth mean? It means resolution. When you have that much bandwidth and you're able to pump that much data out, you're able to hit those performance benchmarks. There's no bottlenecking. There's nothing holding the GPU back. And this is the secret to Microsoft's ability of hitting 4K at 60 frames per second on a console. This is absolutely amazing. Now, Forza 6 is a first-party title. It's coming directly from Microsoft, and it'll be interesting to see how third-party titles make use of this system. But let's look at the Xbox Scorpio for a second. Microsoft said we're going to build a system that developers will enjoy developing for, and it's very, very similar to a PC. Right? Before, what we had were consoles that were so custom that it would irritate the shit out of developers because they would have to learn, through their SDKs and all the such, how to create these games, port these games, and, and all that crazy nonsense. And so I think with the Xbox Scorpio, you're going to see developers just really develop with passion and give us some really, really beautiful games. Unlike what was that game? Mass Effect Andromeda, where people were complaining that it didn't seem like next gen, at least from the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One. But let's also talk about what that means with the Xbox Scorpio. Well, if Mass Effect Andromeda was running 1080p at 30 frames per second, the Scorpio is going to be able to take that very same game and upscale it to 4K, make it run 4K at 60 frames per second. So you're not going to get the jitters, the jags, all that, stuff associated with, a system that was not prepared to handle a game like Mass Effect, and or basically a studio who decided to, cut corners just for the sake of getting a title out there. What this also means is that with the 326 gigabytes per second of bandwidth, what this means is that you can super sample 1080p. Wait, really? Okay, let me explain that to you. Super sampling. The game can run at 4K, 60 frames per second, but because of that bandwidth, they can take that game, that resolution, that image, and super sample it onto your monitor, even if your monitor is only a 1080p monitor. And more importantly, it will make the games look clearer, sharper, run better, run smoother, run faster. You would have more vibrance in your games. And then, well, if you have a 4K monitor, well, you're in luck because, well, you're going to get native 4K. I'm really excited for the Xbox Scorpio, and, we're waiting for its release in E3. There's been speculation on pricing, and the pricing is speculated to be somewhere at $499, or maybe if Microsoft decides to get really, really aggressive and put the nail in the coffin in the PS4 community. Yeah, guys, I'm sorry, man. Looks like Microsoft really just wants to put the nail on the coffin this time. If they do, I wouldn't shy away from the $449 price point. And again, the spec sheets, Microsoft just really created the monster of a console, and I guess they're gonna go in for the kill. But anyways, guys, this is Gabe with Review Dork. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm outie. Peace.